Hey y'all, Travis Watkins here, talking about IRS relief strategies. And if you've enjoyed some of these strategies that we've been doing here on Facebook, you can get my free book that outlines all these things. It's at traviswatkinsbook.com, and it'll give you a free download there if you log on. And today I'm giving you kind of a broad flyby. This is going to be a short one, I think, of everything that we've been talking about here, kind of in summary, in how to solve your IRS problems. And I've got 8 things here that are really the summary of everything that we've been talking about. First of all, so I'll give you, kind of a scenario that describes potentially your tax problem, and then give you kind of the debt relief programs that the IRS offers to remedy that particular issue. All right, the first one, and we hear these all the time, and we've made this kind of the focus of the new book that I've got coming out here in the next few weeks. But we often hear people say that they want a deal when it comes to their IRS debt. In other words, they want to pay less than what the IRS is saying that they owe. And for those folks that qualify, what you're looking at there is the IRS's doubt as to collectability offer in compromise. That will take care of those types of things. So doubt as to collectability offer in compromise. You may also be a candidate, or you would otherwise be a candidate, I guess, if you don't make the offer in compromise requirements. You could be a candidate for a partial pay installment agreement, which does the exact same thing really that an offer in compromise does. They figure out what's theirs in the process of analyzing your financials, and you pay out your net disposable income over the course of whatever the number of months that remain in the IRS's statute of limitations on your debt. So that does a very similar thing. It often gets you a deal for less than what the IRS is saying that you owe. It could also possibly mean that if you are otherwise a bankruptcy candidate for Chapter 7 bankruptcy, and that's something that you would need to talk to a bankruptcy attorney about. But if you are otherwise a Chapter 7 bankruptcy candidate, there are some 1040 individual taxes that could be discharged in that bankruptcy. We've talked about that previously. So that's another way that you could end up paying less than what the IRS is saying that you owe. The second type of scenario that we hear often is, I want to pay out the IRS debt. In other words, I can't qualify, or I don't want to go through the hassle of going through the offer and compromise process, because it is a long process. It takes usually at least a year to get that all wrapped up with the IRS and going, and some people would just rather start paying the debt. And in that scenario, you're looking at some type of an installment agreement, and we've been over simple or streamlined installment agreements in the past. Those are $25,000 and below is the typical one, up to sometimes $50,000 without having to produce too much paperwork, too many financials. So that's what you're looking at if you want to pay back the government what they're saying that you owe. So simple and complex installment agreements. We hear people say, my tax debt is old, or the statute of limitations is about to run on this thing. What should I do? And we talked about before, if it is a scenario where you are calculating the number of months that the IRS still has left on you, and I've shown you how to do that with the various transcripts that the IRS keeps on every taxpayer, then you may be able to wait out the statute of limitations on certain years, but always make sure that this is a calculated waiting and not just a procrastination type of waiting, because the IRS does jump out of the bushes at the most inopportune time when the kids need braces, or mom or dad is sick and in the hospital or something like that, to inevitably jump out of the bushes there. But if you are calculating the amount of time that the IRS has left to collect, and you're ready and standing by if they do jump out of the bushes, then you can do a calculated waiting out of the statute of limitations in some scenarios. The fourth thing that we hear is that the penalties are killing me. And those penalties are rough. There's a failure to file and a failure to pay penalty, and those things will really mess with you big time. And we often hear, that the debt when it first started was X amount, and then it's 2X that amount in a year or two later, and the penalties are killing you. If you want to get rid of those, there are a couple of different types of penalty abatement or forgiveness programs. We've talked about previously the reasonable cause type analysis, where you show the IRS each year that they should forgive the tax because of life events that were going on. And we talked about the first-time penalty abatement and what goes into that type of an analysis. Those are good if you've been a good taxpayer and you've just experienced a hiccup of some type financially or in your life, that you can get a one-time penalty abatement if you otherwise apply for a first-time penalty abatement. Next one, number 5, we often hear that my spouse caused the tax problem, and we have been over the innocent and injured spouse type of relief that the IRS offers there. So go back and watch that video if you haven't already seen that one. Number 6, we often hear I can't pay for necessities of life, and the IRS is not completely tone deaf to that complaint. If that describes you, then you should apply with the IRS for the currently not collectible status, which is a safe harbor typically for 2 years for taxpayers who can't pay for food, clothing, shelter, health, welfare, or transportation. Number 7, we hear taxpayers say, I disagree with my debt or the IRS status that they have given me as a taxpayer. In other words, the most typical one that we hear on that one is from business owners or people that have the access to company checks, the bank signature card, things like that, but otherwise are not in the decision-making process there at the company. The IRS will stick them with a part of the payroll debt, the trust fund recovery penalty, and you can appeal that. We've talked about that. I think we talked about that yesterday, as a matter of fact. So you can do that if you disagree with the status that the IRS is giving you. If you disagree with the debt itself, that may be an audit that you are disagreeing with. There are appeals. If there's enough time before the assessment statute expiration date that the IRS has in order to appeal your audit, you may also be a candidate for, or instead you may be a candidate for, a doubt as to liability offer in compromise. That's kind of a rare subset, but is available there if you are disagreeing with the amount that the IRS is saying. And finally, we hear taxpayers routinely tell us that they disagree with an IRS decision or on a relief proposal that they have given. In other words, an offer of compromise. The IRS has said no, or the IRS has denied something that you've asked for short of them dipping into your wages or bank account, and those are collection appeals of various types. Offer and compromise appeals are very common because they do deny offers quite a bit. There is also a handy little appeal kind of along the way there. If the IRS has sent a final notice of intent to levy you, then you can do a collection due process hearing up to 30 days from the final notice of intent to levy. If it's gone past that, up to 1 year, then you can do what's called an equivalency hearing. And these things are nifty because they don't allow the statute of limitations to stop against the IRS, which they do when you request a timely collection due process hearing. But these equivalency hearings, the IRS, it's within their discretion whether or not they will go ahead and stop collection while that is going on. Okay. There is also the cap appeal. We've talked about that. Those are for any other type of decisions that the IRS is making or threatening short of or past the time that they have to send you a collection, a final notice of intent to levy. You can talk to the group manager and typically get a independent appeal, keeping in mind, of course, that these folks still work for the IRS at the appeals office, but they're not in the same building typically, on a cap appeal. In certain circumstances, you can also ask the taxpayer advocate to step in and help you with any denial or problems that you're having with the IRS collections team. That's through filing of a 911 tax form for taxpayer advocate help. All right. I should point out that these things are not mutually exclusive. In other words, you're not stuck with one in most of these. You can start one and bail out and maybe do another one, keeping in mind that most things, when you ask the IRS to do something, are going to stop their statute of limitations. So keep that in mind always. But you are not stuck typically or pigeonholed into one type of relief here. I often say where one door closes, another one opens at the IRS, or a window opens up around back, and you can try several of these types of things, and you can try them in tandem. And the most common type of tandem relief that we are successful with is the installment agreement, where you ask them for a payment plan, but you also ask them to cut off some of the penalties and interest through a penalty abatement request. And so those work together, kind of hand in hand. So big picture, you can use these together or bail out of one and start another. If you want us to do these things for you, we deal with the IRS all day, every day, and we do so quite successfully. If you want to talk to a tax professional right now, you can do so at 800-721-7054. All right. I hope you're having a great day, and thanks for watching.